Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about something real today. There are certain things that if a man says them to you, you should not ignore. And I'm not just talking about little slip-ups or misunderstandings here. No, I'm talking about words and phrases that should send a massive red flag flying in your face. If he says these things, it's time to walk away. No questions asked. You see, relationships are supposed to lift you up, make you feel loved, respected, and valued. But when these words get thrown around, it's a sign that something is seriously off. You deserve better than to settle for anything less than the best. And if you hear one of these things, it's your sign to step out before you lose more than you gain. Trust me, you don't want to miss this conversation because it's about protecting your peace, your heart, and your worth. So let's get into it. If he says this, walk away immediately. When a man says, "You're crazy," or "You're overreacting," it's more than just an annoying comment. It's a red flag that shouldn't be ignored. In a healthy relationship, both partners should feel free to express their feelings and emotions without fear of being belittled or dismissed. But when a man uses these words, he's not just brushing off your concerns. He's invalidating your feelings entirely. This is a form of emotional manipulation known as gaslighting, and it can be incredibly damaging to your self-esteem and mental health. At the heart of this behavior is a lack of respect. A man who truly values you will listen to what you're saying, even if he doesn't fully agree with it. He won't dismiss your feelings with a sweeping comment like, "You're crazy," because he understands that your perspective is important. When someone says, "You're overreacting," they're attempting to minimize your emotions and make you feel like you're wrong for having them. It's a way to shift the blame onto you, making it seem like you're the one who's irrational rather than them acknowledging any responsibility for the situation. This manipulation tactic can make you second guess yourself, question your sanity, or feel like you're overreacting when in reality your concerns are completely valid. The issue here isn't that you might be overly emotional, because let's face it, everyone has moments where they're upset or frustrated, and it's perfectly normal to express those feelings. The issue is the way he chooses to respond to them. Instead of listening, understanding, or offering empathy, he chooses to shut you down and invalidate your experience. And when you hear this repeatedly, you might start to feel like you're walking on eggshells, always afraid that your feelings will be dismissed or minimized. This isn't healthy, and it's not the kind of relationship that will help you grow or feel secure. What makes this even more toxic is the fact that the longer this behavior continues, the more you might start to doubt yourself. You may begin to wonder if you are indeed overreacting or if you're too emotional. This type of mental manipulation can wear you down over time, eroding your confidence and making you feel like you're not entitled to your emotions. That's why it's so crucial to recognize when this happens and set clear boundaries. When a man says you're crazy or overreacting, it's a signal that he's trying to control the narrative and silence your feelings. No one, especially someone who is supposed to care about you, has the right to make you feel like your emotions don't matter. Furthermore, this phrase often signals a deeper issue, emotional immaturity, or a lack of emotional intelligence. A man who is emotionally mature can handle difficult conversations, express empathy, and acknowledge when his partner is upset. He doesn't shut down those feelings or try to make the other person feel small. On the other hand, a man who resorts to calling you crazy or overdramatic likely doesn't have the emotional tools to deal with conflict in a healthy way. Instead of taking the time to listen, understand, and work through the issue, he's opting for a shortcut that ultimately places the blame on you. This is not a behavior that should be tolerated in a loving relationship. Moreover, these comments aren't just damaging in the moment. They also set the stage for future emotional manipulation. If you allow him to get away with dismissing your feelings, you're essentially giving him permission to continue doing so. Over time, this will lead to a relationship dynamic where one person's emotions are constantly disregarded, while the other gets away with whatever they want without consequence. This type of imbalance can create deep emotional wounds that are hard to heal, as it forces you to suppress your own feelings just to avoid conflict or being called crazy. Again, the truth is, healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, open communication, and empathy. Both partners should feel safe expressing their feelings without fear of ridicule or dismissal. If you find yourself constantly being told you're crazy or overreacting, it's not a sign of love or care. It's a sign that the relationship is not providing the emotional support you deserve. It's time to seriously question whether this relationship is worth continuing if your feelings are consistently disregarded. If you hear these words often, it's crucial to take a step back and evaluate whether this is the kind of relationship you want to be in. No one deserves to feel like their emotions are invalid or that they have to hide their true feelings in order to avoid being criticized. It's not about whether your emotions are right or wrong. It's about how your partner treats them. You deserve someone who will listen, empathize, and work through issues with you, not someone who will brush off your feelings with hurtful words. In the end, hearing you're crazy or you're overreacting is a wake-up call. It's time to walk away from a relationship that dismisses your emotions and doesn't allow you to be your authentic self. You are worthy of love, respect, and validation. Don't settle for anything less. If a man truly cares about you, he will never make you feel crazy for expressing your feelings. He will stand by you, listen to you, and support you through thick and thin. Anything less is not worth your time or energy. When a man tells you, "I don't need to explain myself to you," it's a serious red flag that should make you question the foundation of your relationship. Communication is a key pillar in any healthy partnership. Without open dialogue and transparency, there's no real understanding, no room for growth, and no way to truly connect with one another. So when a man shuts you out with the statement that he doesn't need to explain himself, it's not just a momentary frustration. It's a clear sign of disrespect and a lack of investment in the relationship. In any relationship, especially a romantic one, both partners should feel comfortable expressing themselves and explaining their actions when necessary. No one expects complete transparency all the time, but when it comes to important matters, it's essential for both people to be open and honest. If your partner refuses to explain their actions or doesn't feel the need to clarify their behavior, it suggests they are trying to avoid accountability. This is a serious problem. A healthy relationship isn't about one person having the power to control what's said or kept hidden. It's about mutual understanding and shared responsibility. When someone refuses to explain themselves or refuses to communicate, it often stems from a desire to control the situation or avoid being held responsible. He might want to act with impunity, doing what he wants without anyone questioning his actions or motives. But a loving relationship is about both parties being open and transparent, especially when there are misunderstandings or concerns. If your partner truly values you, he'll be willing to engage in difficult conversations, explain his side of the story, and work through issues together. The refusal to explain something important shows a disregard for your feelings and concerns. Instead of seeing you as an equal partner with valid questions and emotions, he sees you as someone who should just accept things as they are, with no right to challenge or understand what's going on. If your partner regularly tells you that they don't need to explain themselves, it can lead to a dynamic where you're left in the dark, constantly guessing or wondering what's going on. This lack of transparency can lead to insecurity and confusion. You might begin questioning the trust you have in the relationship, wondering if he's hiding something or whether he's simply not taking your concerns seriously. Over time, this constant lack of clarity will erode the foundation of your connection. When communication breaks down, everything else begins to crumble as well. But let's take it a step further. When someone refuses to explain themselves, it's often a sign of emotional immaturity. A partner who isn't willing to have tough conversations, explain his actions, or address conflicts is probably not emotionally equipped to be in a mature relationship. Relationships require a level of vulnerability and self-awareness, both of which are missing when one partner refuses to engage in open dialogue. The avoidance of communication doesn't come from a place of strength. It comes from fear or selfishness. Instead of addressing the issue and resolving it, he's opting for the easy way out. He'd rather keep you at arm's length, not allowing you to get too close or understand what's going on in his world. Now, you might wonder why this matters so much. After all, some people don't like to talk about their feelings, right? Well, it matters because a relationship without communication isn't a partnership. It's a one-sided affair. You're meant to share the highs and lows, the good and the bad with each other. If one person is withholding, constantly shutting down the other, or leaving things unsaid, you're not sharing a life together. You're living separate lives with one person in the dark. This creates distance and resentment. Furthermore, this lack of explanation can lead to assumptions, misinterpretations, and ultimately distrust. If your partner refuses to clarify something important, you're left to fill in the blanks, and often your mind will go to negative places. You'll start imagining worst-case scenarios, wondering if he's hiding something, or if the relationship isn't as secure as you thought. That's not healthy. Healthy relationships thrive on open communication where both partners feel safe expressing their feelings, sharing their thoughts, and explaining their actions. This builds trust. Trust is not built on silence or stonewalling. It's built on understanding and empathy. In the long run, if you let someone continue to shut you out, you'll eventually feel like you're not truly part of their life. You'll begin questioning if your thoughts and concerns even matter. And if they don't, then what's the point of being in a relationship where you're not heard or understood? You deserve someone who will sit down with you, have tough conversations, explain themselves, and work with you to resolve conflicts in a healthy way. You deserve someone who values your opinion and who is willing to be vulnerable enough to share their side of the story. Communication isn't just a nicety, it's a necessity in any healthy relationship. So, if you find yourself repeatedly hearing, "I don't need to explain myself to you," it's time to take a step back and assess the situation. Are you being treated as an equal partner? Are your concerns being valued? Or are you being pushed aside and told to accept things without ever knowing the full truth? If it's the latter, this is not the relationship you want. You deserve more than that. You deserve someone who is willing to explain, to communicate, and to build a foundation of trust and respect. Don't settle for less. When a man says, "I'm not looking for anything serious," it's a phrase that should immediately raise concerns. Relationships are built on mutual understanding, respect, and shared goals. So when someone makes it clear that they're not looking for anything serious, it essentially sets the tone for what they believe the relationship should be: casual, short-term, or perhaps even something that's not rooted in emotional commitment. While everyone has different ideas about what they want out of a relationship, it's crucial to recognize that this statement often reveals a lack of interest in deeper emotional connections or long-term involvement. The first problem with a man saying he's not looking for anything serious is that it can undermine the very essence of what most people hope to find in a partnership. For many, relationships are about building a future together, sharing experiences, supporting each other, and growing as a team. When someone expresses that they don't want something serious, they're essentially signaling that they're not interested in contributing to that shared future or emotional bond. This can be devastating if you're hoping for a deeper connection or if you've already invested time and emotion into the relationship. It's a disheartening reality check that the other person may not be on the same page as you, and that can hurt. It's important to recognize that this statement isn't always about you. It's about where they stand in terms of their readiness for commitment. A man who says he doesn't want something serious might be emotionally unavailable, dealing with past baggage, or simply not in a place where he's willing to be vulnerable and build something meaningful. While this may not have anything to do with your worth or the quality of the connection you share, it's still essential to understand what it means for the future of the relationship. If he's not ready for anything serious, there's little chance that the relationship will evolve into something more substantial, and you could end up being stuck in a situation where you're emotionally invested, but he's not. This creates an imbalance and can lead to disappointment, frustration, and heartache. Another issue with a man saying he's not looking for something serious is that it might lead to emotional confusion, especially if his actions don't match his words. Sometimes men may say they don't want anything serious, but their behavior suggests otherwise. They might still be affectionate, attentive, and emotionally invested, which can confuse you about where things truly stand. This inconsistency can lead to mixed signals, leaving you unsure of where the relationship is heading or whether they'll ever be open to something more meaningful in the future. It can be emotionally exhausting to constantly try to decipher someone's true intentions, and ultimately, it leaves you questioning if they will ever be ready to commit. Additionally, some individuals use the "I'm not looking for anything serious" line as a way to avoid any emotional responsibility or commitment. It can be a convenient excuse to keep things casual and avoid the vulnerability that comes with opening up to someone and forming a deeper connection. For some, it's easier to keep things at a surface level and avoid the risk of getting hurt, rejected, or rejected in return. This approach is often more about them protecting themselves rather than being open to building a meaningful relationship with someone else. They might not want to put in the effort to make the relationship work or deal with the challenges that come with long-term commitment. The issue here is not just the lack of commitment, it's the potential emotional toll it can take on you. When you enter a relationship with someone who isn't interested in something serious, you may begin to invest your time, energy, and emotions, only to realize that they're not on the same level. It can feel like you're giving more than you're getting. It can lead to feelings of frustration, disappointment, and even resentment. You might start wondering why they're not prioritizing the relationship or why it doesn't seem to be progressing. And as you can continue to invest in the connection, you might find yourself in a position where you're waiting for something to change, but it never does. In the end, you've invested time and emotions into something that wasn't meant to go anywhere, and that can feel like a waste of both your time and energy. While it's tempting to try to change someone's mind or to think that they'll eventually come around to the idea of a committed relationship, the truth is that if someone has already made it clear that they're not interested in anything serious, it's unlikely that they will suddenly change their perspective. People are who they are, And while they can grow or evolve over time, their basic stance on commitment or the kind of relationship they want will remain fairly consistent. So, continuing to invest in a relationship that doesn't have the potential for serious commitment is a disservice to yourself. Ultimately, hearing, "I'm not looking for anything serious," should be a wake-up call. It's an indication that you're not on the same page, and it's time to reassess your priorities. While it's tempting to hold out hope that things might change or that they'll eventually realize how great you are, the reality is that you deserve someone who wants the same things you do, someone who is ready and willing to commit to building a future together. If someone isn't ready for that, it's time to move on and find someone who is. Your time, energy, and love are precious, and you deserve someone who recognizes that and values you for who you are. Don't settle for less than you deserve. When someone says they're not looking for anything serious, take it at face value and walk away with your head held high. You are worthy of more. When a man says, "I need space," it can be one of the most confusing and painful things to hear in a relationship. The phrase is often delivered without any real explanation, leaving you wondering what exactly he means, why he feels the need for space, and how you're supposed to respond. At first, this may seem like a reasonable request. Everyone needs a little time to themselves every now and then. But when it's repeated, or when the need for space starts to feel like an excuse to withdraw emotionally or avoid deeper connection, that's when the red flags should start waving. First, it's important to acknowledge that in any relationship, both individuals should feel comfortable taking time for themselves. Personal space can be a healthy and necessary part of maintaining a balance between independence and togetherness. Whether it's pursuing personal hobbies, spending time with friends, or simply having a moment to decompress, everyone needs space to be their own person. However, when a partner consistently asks for space without any clear boundaries or communication, it becomes more than just a need for personal time. It can be a sign of deeper issues. One of the most significant problems with this phrase is that it often indicates a lack of willingness to engage in the relationship. People who value their partners make an effort to connect and work through problems, not avoid them. When a man repeatedly says he needs space, it could be a way for him to avoid addressing issues in the relationship. Rather than communicating openly about what's bothering him or what he needs, he may be using the space excuse to pull back emotionally, leaving you to figure things out on your own. This withdrawal can leave you feeling rejected, confused, and uncertain about the relationship's future. The need for space can also be a sign that he's losing interest in you, but doesn't have the courage to express it directly. Instead of confronting his feelings head on, he uses the need for space as a way to distance himself gradually without a clear explanation. This can be extremely frustrating because, as the partner on the receiving end, you're left in limbo, unsure whether he's just going through a rough patch or if he's genuinely checking out of the relationship. The uncertainty that follows such statements can breed anxiety and fear, especially if the need for space turns into prolonged periods of distance without meaningful communication. This lack of clarity often leads to emotional confusion, where you find yourself questioning what you did wrong or what has changed. Moreover, when someone frequently asks for space, it can create a dynamic where the person asking for space holds all the power in the relationship. They can dictate when and how much time they need away, leaving the other person feeling like they have no control over the relationship's direction. This can lead to feelings of imbalance, where you feel like you're constantly waiting for him to return emotionally or physically. You may start adjusting your life to accommodate his needs, putting in more effort to win his attention or affection, while he continues to retreat into his space. This dynamic isn't healthy as it shifts the power imbalance and causes one person to feel like they are constantly in a state of uncertainty. Another issue with hearing, "I need space," is the lack of an actionable explanation that follows. Simply saying, "I need space," without any context can leave you feeling helpless. What does space mean to him? Does it mean taking a break from the relationship? Does it mean spending time with friends or pursuing personal interests? Is it temporary or indefinite? Without an explanation, the statement remains vague and open to interpretation, which can lead to overthinking and emotional turmoil. If the request for space is not accompanied by a discussion about the reasons behind it or clear boundaries, it can quickly spiral into a communication breakdown. You may find yourself wondering if he's just being distant to avoid conflict, or if he's losing interest in the relationship altogether. In these situations, the lack of clarity only exacerbates the feelings of confusion and insecurity. When someone says they need space, it's essential to assess whether this request is being used as a means of emotional avoidance. If he's consistently withdrawing and avoiding deeper conversations about feelings, desires, or relationship goals, it might signal that he's not fully committed to addressing the relationship's issues or growing together as a couple. Emotional avoidance is a form of escapism that prevents growth and resolution. Instead of working through the challenges, he may be opting to disengage, leaving you to carry the emotional weight of the relationship on your own. If this pattern continues over time, it's crucial to reflect on whether the relationship is healthy and whether your emotional needs are being met. Relationships are partnerships, and both individuals should be equally invested in maintaining the connection. If you're always the one reaching out, initiating communication, or trying to close the emotional gap while your partner continues to ask for space, the imbalance becomes evident. You deserve someone who wants to engage with you, who makes the effort to communicate, and who is willing to work through difficult times together. If someone continues to withdraw without ever coming back to the table to discuss things, it's time to ask yourself if this is truly the type of relationship you want or deserve. In the end, when a man says, "I need space," it's important to listen to the context of the statement and pay attention to the actions that follow. If the need for space is healthy, temporary, and communicated with clear intentions, then it can be a necessary part of the relationship. However, if it becomes a constant refrain, a reason for emotional distance, or a way to avoid the relationship's challenges, it's a sign that you need to reconsider whether this relationship is serving both of you in a meaningful way. You deserve a relationship where both partners are fully invested in each other's emotional well-being and growth. Anything less than that isn't worth your time. When a man says, "You're too good for me," it's a phrase that often sounds like a compliment, but it can actually be a sign that something deeper is at play. On the surface, it seems like he's acknowledging your worth and perhaps even admiring your qualities. But when you dig deeper, this statement can be a red flag that suggests he may be struggling with feelings of inadequacy, insecurity, or a reluctance to commit fully to the relationship. The first issue with hearing, "You're too good for me," is that it can indicate that the man doesn't believe he is worthy of you. While it might seem like he's flattering you, the truth is that this kind of statement often stems from his own low self-esteem. He may feel like he can't measure up to the standards he perceives you have, and he may believe that he doesn't deserve someone as wonderful as you. This feeling of unworthiness can create a barrier in the relationship, as it can cause him to distance himself or push you away to avoid dealing with his own perceived inadequacies. It's also a way for him to avoid vulnerability. If he can convince himself that you're out of his league, he might be able to justify keeping his emotions at bay or not fully committing to the relationship. When a man says, "You're too good for me," It can also reflect a lack of confidence in the relationship's longevity. It can be a way for him to hedge his bets, essentially preparing himself for the possibility that the relationship won't work out. By stating that you're too good for him, he's almost planting the seed of doubt in your mind, subtly suggesting that you might eventually realize your worth and leave him. It's a self-protective mechanism that allows him to avoid being fully invested, emotionally or otherwise, in case the relationship doesn't work out. This kind of emotional distance can make it difficult to build a solid, trusting relationship, as it's based on a fear of failure rather than a commitment to working through challenges together. Another reason why "you're too good for me" is a red flag is that it can be a form of emotional manipulation. He may be using this phrase to play on your sympathy, making you feel guilty or responsible for his insecurities. By positioning himself as someone who isn't worthy of you, he might expect you to reassure him, tell him how great he is, or even lower your standards to accommodate him. This can create an unhealthy dynamic in the relationship where his insecurities dictate how you act, making you feel like you need to constantly bolster his self-esteem or prove that you accept him as he is. In reality, relationships should be a partnership where both individuals feel equally valued and respected, not one where one person has to constantly soothe the other's insecurities. Additionally, this statement can signal that he is not ready for the commitment or responsibility that comes with a healthy, balanced relationship. By claiming that you're too good for him, he might be using it as an excuse to avoid the effort required to nurture the relationship. He may recognize that you have qualities that make you an ideal partner: ambition, kindness, emotional maturity, but he may not feel like he can rise to meet those qualities. Rather than stepping up to the challenge, he uses this statement as a way to withdraw emotionally, not wanting to deal with the pressure of being the partner he thinks you deserve. This can leave you feeling frustrated, as you may be looking for someone who is willing to meet you at your level, not someone who constantly pulls back because of their own perceived shortcomings. When you hear this phrase, it's important to pay attention to the underlying message. He may not feel confident in himself, and this lack of confidence could affect his ability to engage fully in the relationship. In a healthy partnership, both people should feel like they contribute equally and support each other's growth. If one person constantly downplays their own worth, and the other feels like they have to compensate for this insecurity, it creates an unbalanced dynamic that is unsustainable in the long run. A relationship should be a space where both individuals bring their strengths and weaknesses to the table and work together to create a fulfilling connection, not one where one person feels like they need to carry the weight of the other's emotional baggage. Moreover, when someone continuously repeats the phrase, "you're too good for me," it can eventually erode your confidence in the relationship. If he can't accept that you see him as your equal and continues to position himself as not good enough, it can make you start questioning your own judgment. You might wonder if he really believes in his own worth and whether he is truly capable of having a healthy, equal partnership with you. Constantly hearing this statement can cause you to feel like you're not truly being seen or appreciated for the person you are, as the focus shifts entirely onto his perceived flaws instead of the strengths you both bring to the relationship. If someone is constantly telling you that you're too good for them, it may be time to have an open conversation about what's really going on, rather than accepting this statement at face value. It's important to explore why he feels that way and what it means for the future of the relationship. Are his insecurities something that can be addressed and worked through? Or is this a pattern of self-doubt that will continue to hinder your connection? If he is unwilling to confront his insecurities and put in the effort to grow, it may be a sign that he's not ready for the kind of relationship you deserve. Ultimately, the phrase, "you're too good for me," can be a signal that something deeper is at play. While it may sound like a compliment, it's often a reflection of insecurity, emotional distance, or a lack of readiness for a committed relationship. It's important to recognize this and assess whether the relationship is balanced and whether both partners are equally invested in building something strong and lasting. If one person is consistently downplaying their worth or retreating emotionally, it can create a toxic dynamic that prevents the relationship from flourishing. Don't settle for someone who doesn't recognize their own value or appreciate you for the incredible person you are. You deserve someone who sees you as an equal and is ready to build a future together. When a man says, "I don't want to label this," it can be one of the most confusing and unsettling things you hear in a relationship. At first glance, it might seem like he's just being casual, not wanting to rush into defining things too soon. But in reality, this statement can often signal a deeper issue, one that might indicate a lack of commitment or fear of responsibility. It's easy to dismiss the words as a way of keeping things light and fun. But if you're serious about the relationship, this kind of statement needs to be examined closely. The first red flag with this phrase is that it can reflect a reluctance to commit. When a man says he doesn't want to label the relationship, it could mean he's not ready to invest emotionally in a serious, committed partnership. Relationships, especially as they deepen, naturally evolve into something more defined, whether that's through conversations about exclusivity, future plans, or simply calling the relationship what it is. But when a man refuses to label things, it often means he's not ready to take that step, either because he's uncertain about the relationship or because he doesn't want to make the commitment that comes with labeling it. This can leave you feeling uncertain, as if you're stuck in a limbo with no clear direction or assurance about where things are going. Another reason why "I don't want to label this" can be a warning sign is that it often indicates a fear of vulnerability. Relationships require vulnerability and openness, and putting a label on the relationship means acknowledging that you're both emotionally invested. By avoiding the label, he may be trying to protect himself from opening up too much. This can be a defense mechanism, a way of keeping things at arm's length so that he doesn't have to expose himself emotionally. He might be scared of the responsibilities and expectations that come with labeling a relationship, or he might be afraid of the potential pain of emotional intimacy. For him, keeping things undefined might feel safer, but for you, it can create confusion and make it harder to understand where you stand. When a man says he doesn't want to label the relationship, it could also signal that he's not taking the relationship seriously. By refusing to label it, he may be signaling that he's not fully invested in your future together. He might enjoy spending time with you, but he might not see a long-term potential or isn't ready to face the reality of a serious commitment. This is particularly evident if he's saying this early on in the relationship after you've already established a connection. If he's refusing to label the relationship after you've been seeing each other for months, it could be a sign that he's hesitant about taking things further. You might find yourself wondering whether he values the relationship as much as you do, or whether he's just enjoying the present without thinking about the future. If he's not willing to label things, it could be a reflection of his reluctance to make the kind of effort required to build something long-lasting. One of the more painful aspects of hearing, "I don't want to label this," is that it can leave you feeling unsure about your place in his life. Without a label, it's difficult to understand how you fit into his world. Are you just a casual fling to him? Or does he see you as someone with potential for something more? Are you just someone he's seeing when it's convenient for him? Or are you a partner with whom he could share a future? When the relationship remains undefined, it leaves you in a state of emotional uncertainty, constantly questioning whether you matter to him as much as he matters to you. You might find yourself hoping that the situation will change, waiting for him to come around and offer more clarity. But without communication and an actual decision on his part, that uncertainty can drag on, leaving you stuck and frustrated. Moreover, "I don't want to label this," can also indicate that he's keeping his options open. If he's unwilling to define the relationship, it might be because he doesn't want to commit exclusively to you. He may still be interested in seeing other people, or he may be hesitant to put all of his emotional eggs in one basket. This can be a tough pill to swallow, especially if you're hoping for something more stable and exclusive. If he's unwilling to make a commitment to you, it's important to ask yourself whether you're comfortable with being in a relationship where the terms are constantly in flux. You deserve someone who is willing to be clear about their intentions and who wants to build something stable and lasting. One of the most challenging aspects of hearing, "I don't want to label this," is the emotional ambiguity it creates. Without a label, everything feels uncertain. It's difficult to know how much emotional energy you should invest in the relationship because you don't know where it stands. Are you allowed to be emotionally invested, or should you pull back to avoid getting hurt? This ambiguity can cause emotional distress, as you may find yourself constantly second guessing your actions and your feelings. You might even try to play it cool to avoid seeming too eager or too attached, which can create an unhealthy dynamic in the relationship. You're essentially waiting for him to decide how much he wants to invest in you, and in the meantime, you're left with your emotions hanging in the balance. When you hear this phrase, it's important to take a step back and assess what you need from the relationship. Do you want clarity, commitment, and security? Or are you willing to accept things as they are, uncertain and undefined? Relationships thrive on mutual understanding and clear communication. If one person is hesitant to define things, it can create an imbalance where one partner is emotionally invested and the other is not. If you're serious about the relationship, it's important to have a conversation about where things stand and what you both want moving forward. If he's unwilling to label the relationship or have a discussion about what the future looks like, it's time to ask yourself if this relationship is fulfilling your emotional needs. In the end, when a man says, "I don't want to label this," it's a sign that you need to think carefully about what you want and what you deserve. Labels aren't just for defining relationships. They are a way of making both partners feel secure and understood. If he's unwilling to put a label on things, it might indicate that he's not as committed as you are. You deserve someone who is ready to define the relationship, put in the effort, and work toward building something meaningful and lasting. If he's not ready to label it, it's time for you to decide whether you want to keep waiting or move on to a relationship where both of you are on the same page.